The students posted on Facebook, quote, "This teacher sucks. Somehow I think she just got lazy and gave everybody a 65. We should all congratulate ourselves for leaving a blank-free legacy for future students." The blank here was just the name of the professor. For these critical posts about their professor, the students got punished. In 2007, two Canadian students, Keith and Steven Pridgen, twin brothers at the University of Calgary, criticized one of their professors on Facebook. What started as a few angry posts turned into a major legal battle, one that tested the limits of free speech on Canadian campuses. In this video, I will walk you through the key facts of the case, the court's ruling, and then share my personal reflections, including an absolutely true story from my time working at a Dutch university. Keith and Steven Pridgen were frustrated with the professor's teaching. Along with some other classmates, they took their frustration and complaints to Facebook. One of their posts said bluntly, "This teacher sucks." Others echoed similar criticisms. The University of Calgary didn't take this lightly. Administrators charged the brothers with non-academic misconduct, arguing their posts harmed the professor's reputation. The sanctions were serious. The brothers were put on a 6-month probation, they were barred from holding any executive positions in student bodies, and they were required to write a formal letter of apology to the professor. The brothers pushed back. They argued that their right to free expression under the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms had been violated, so they took this dispute to court. In 2010, the Alberta Court of Queen's Bench ruled in favor of the Pridgen brothers. The judge said that universities as public institutions are bound by the charter, and that disciplining the brothers for their online criticism infringed on their freedom of expression. The university, however, was not convinced by the court's ruling. It disagreed with the ruling and decided to appeal. Their argument was twofold. First, they claimed that universities are not really government actors or governmental agencies, and therefore the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms should not directly apply. And second, they argued even if the charter did apply, their disciplinary action was still reasonable and proportional, and therefore should stand. In 2012, the Alberta Court of Appeal gave its ruling. In a split decision, 2 judges to 1, the court upheld the earlier judgment. The majority indicated that when a university disciplines students, it is exercising statutory authority, in this case the Post-Secondary Learning Act. Because the university was acting under statutory power, its decisions had to comply with the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. The judges stressed that freedom of expression protects not only polite and well-formulated opinions, but also criticism that may be unpopular, blunt, or rude. Since the Pridgen brothers' Facebook posts were critical but not threatening, punishing them infringed their constitutional rights. The court was clear: disciplining students for harsh online criticism of a professor was simply unconstitutional. This appeal was important because it confirmed the principle at a higher level. Canadian universities as public institutions must respect students' freedom of expression, even if that expression is harsh and critical towards faculty members of the university. These were the facts of the case, and now let's move on to my analysis, which is just my opinion. There are a few points from this case that I think are noteworthy. First, this case draws a clear line between criticism and harassment. The Pridgen brothers' comments may have been harsh, critical, and rude, but they weren't harassment or threats. Courts treated them as protected speech. Second, this case highlights a difference between Canada and the United States. In US cases like the University of Delaware case, which we covered last week, courts analyze free speech through the lens of the First Amendment. In Canada, their Charter of Rights and Freedoms plays that key role, but the principle is similar. Criticism, even if it stings and offends, is still protected. Third, this case also shows the human side of online criticism. Professors often feel reputational harm very personally, and I have seen this firsthand, and this is an absolutely true story. At one of the universities where I used to work, a colleague of mine just accidentally came across an online post where a student had written some very harsh, critical comments about her. The post was on a personal blog in the student's native language, which I happen to speak, and that was why my colleague asked me to look look at it. Even though the post was not fully in English, but my colleague could still recognize her own name written in the middle of it. That was how she discovered it, because she was just Googling her own name for fun. She was quite upset about this. Nobody likes to see themselves described in nasty terms online. With a bit of checking, the student was eventually identified, and there was a meeting between my colleague and the student. In the end, the student apologized to her and edited the post. So this incident never went to court, but it showed me how emotional these situations can become. For a teacher, seeing negative comments online can feel deeply personal, even if the student just meant it as a venting post. And speaking as a university lecturer myself, I know there are critical and negative comments about me somewhere online. And here on YouTube, I get plenty of negative comments too. You can't stop it. There are entire websites where students rate and critique professors. And even official internal university course evaluations sometimes contain sharp, painful comments. My personal approach is simple. Unless it is a direct threat or harassment, I simply do not pay much attention to it. Some students will always complain. Being criticized is part of the job. You can only please some of the people, some of the time. The lesson from the Pridgen brothers case for universities is that universities need to be very careful not to overreact to critical speech from students, because what looks like misconduct may just be free expression, and courts will step in to protect it. So these are my thoughts and analysis on the case of Keith and Steven Pridgen. What do you think about this case? Can and should students criticize their professors online? I invite you to leave your thoughts and comments down below. On my channel, and specifically in this playlist, we will cover more cases involving academic misconduct, academic disputes and lawsuits, and other higher education controversies. If you find these topics interesting, please stay tuned. Thanks for watching this Ranywayz random video. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.